There's a rite of passage that most of us go through when we first get interested in the idea of using our laser to try to make some extra money. You start making some cool stuff and think, I could sell these, right? So you go to Google, or probably the biggest offender, Etsy, and you start searching for what other people are charging for a similar product. The results pop up on your screen and your heart sinks, because the top results for the product you wanted to sell, there's a company selling something similar for $5 shipped. But buying the materials alone would cost you double or triple that. So you're thinking, how could I possibly compete with those prices? And the answer is, you don't. Today, I want to talk about one very important thing to remember when starting your laser business journey. Never compete on price. You're not Walmart, you're not Michaels, or some big overseas Etsy seller. You're playing an entirely different game. Let's get into it. First, let's discuss the reasons why you shouldn't compete on price. Number one, it's a race to the bottom. When you find yourself competing on price, you'll usually end up in a pricing war where it's a battle of who's willing to take the lowest percentage of profit to acquire a sale. You see this a lot on Amazon, where different companies selling the same exact product are battling to win what's called the buy box. They do this by undercutting each other's prices until one company basically just gives up. This comes with the territory when you're selling the exact same mass manufactured product that everyone else is to a mass audience. But when you're a small laser business like we are, doing custom and personalized products, this is an awful strategy. You end up burnt out doing jobs where you don't make any money and the only person that benefits is the customer. But in this case, we can't blame them because it was a self-inflicted wound. We set the prices too low just because we saw someone else doing it for less money and assumed that we had to do the same thing. Let's use my own business here as an example. This should be fun. I've mentioned in other videos that my main business is designing and laser cutting acrylic patterns for leather workers. And I know for a fact there are much cheaper places to buy similar items than what I offer. Taking a look at AliExpress, here's an acrylic pattern set to make a card holder that's selling for 99 cents right now. Unreal. Here's a comparable product that I sell for $30 plus shipping. And I sell these sets all day long. I wouldn't get out of bed for 99 cents shipped. If I let the fear of cut rate competitors get to me, I would have never started in the first place, because I can't possibly compete with that price, nor do I want to. Number two, it attracts the worst kind of customers. I don't know if this is some kind of immutable law of the universe, but the customers that are only interested in your lowest prices or getting you to discount everything are always more work than the customers that buy your higher priced items. I see this a lot in my own business because I sell products at a range of price points from very cheap to reasonably expensive for my niche. And it's always the lowest priced products where I'm dealing with the most customer issues. This kind of customer is usually only interested in getting what they want at the cheapest possible price, or they'll move on. When you're a massive company like Target or something, that's fine, but again, we're not playing that game. The customer that only shops on price can never really be nurtured into a loyal or repeat customer because they don't care about you at all. And developing that kind of relationship with your customers is extremely important to surviving as a small business. It's easier to sell to repeat customers than to have to acquire new ones all the time. Number three, you'll fall into the trap of lower perceived product value. Translation, people will think your products are crappy. Prime example, let's say you're shopping for a new home on Zillow. You know what kind of house you want, 4-bedroom, 3-bath, backyard for the kids, a driveway. You have your budget and you know the average going rate for a home in your desired area. Lo and behold, a home pops up that meets all your criteria, but for some reason, it's priced significantly less expensive than all the other homes you bookmarked. What's the first thing that comes to mind? What's wrong with it? The definition of perceived value is the value that customers are willing to pay for a particular product or service based on their perception about it. Oftentimes, when you price a product that customers perceive as being too low, they'll equate that with being less valuable. Why is everyone else selling that item for $50, but this guy's selling it for $15? There's got to be something wrong with it. Of course, there's an opposite end to this where you can price an item too high, which will create a similar aversion, but most of us in this industry tend to underprice our products and services. It might seem like a good idea to undercut your competitors, but in the long run, you're only hurting yourself. Now, let's talk about things you can do to ensure you create a product or service with a high perceived value in your customers' minds. Because when you have a higher perception of value, you can charge the price you need to make a good profit. First, you need to turn down unreasonable customers. This sounds like kind of an obvious first step, but you'll be surprised how hard it is to do when the situation arises. It can be really hard to get customers to reach out, especially when you're first getting started, So once you get one, you'll sacrifice more than you think to keep them around. And I do put emphasis on the word unreasonable. There are plenty of customers who are meticulous and particular and take a little more communication than others, but I wouldn't call them unreasonable. Unreasonable usually means demanding, just looking for discounts, or maybe even angry and demeaning. A big clue you're about to deal with an unreasonable customer is they reach out to you and the first thing they mention is being able to get your product or service cheaper somewhere else. I advise being polite, but it's in your best interest not to do business with this type of customer. Number 2, focus on your brand and your content marketing. This is one of those topics that people love to skip over once they hear it for some reason, but your story, your brand is your superpower here. Again, we are not Target or some other faceless mega corporation. We are very small businesses, and it only benefits us to put a face to the name. People prefer to do business with people they either know or have an affinity towards. And since it's impossible to know every potential customer on a personal level, this is where creating and displaying your brand story comes into play. You should at least have a website or Facebook business page with a section that lets people know a little bit about you. If you're having trouble figuring out what to write, just start looking at websites of similar small businesses and see what they do. Here's an example from Magnolia Networks, which most of us here in the States know as Chip and Jo from HGTV. They are popular multimillionaires that are on TV and still understand how important it is to let people know who you are. Now, this goes hand in hand with your approach to content marketing. Making content can take on many different forms, but for most of us, that means photos and videos of the stuff we're cutting and engraving. A big mistake a lot of newbies make is setting up an Instagram or a Facebook page for their business and just start spamming pictures of products saying buy now, buy now, buy now, and they wonder why no one's ordering their stuff. That's a topic that requires its own video, so I'll do that in the future, but the short version is that's not how this works. Be honest, when you're casually browsing on Facebook or Instagram and a random product pops up into your feed from a company you've never heard of, how often do you just bust out your credit card and order it right on the spot? Probably close to never, right? The reason we focus on our brand and create content is to hopefully convince customers to go from making a purely logical purchasing decision, i.e. just wanting the lowest price possible, to a more nuanced emotional purchasing decision, i.e. wanting to order specifically from you. And when you make that case effectively, you're free from having to compete on price. I've got a perfect example of this right here. This is a red bandana in a glass test tube. And this red bandana in a glass test tube cost me $51.49. That's a lot of money for a bandana, isn't it? Well, if I was browsing with my logical thinking cap on and I came across this product made by a company I'd never heard of and saw this price, first I would laugh, and then I would go to Amazon and buy one for $6 if I really wanted a bandana. But I didn't do that. You see, this bandana is made by Peter McKinnon with his company Pete's Pirate Life. If you don't know who Peter McKinnon is, he's a massively popular YouTuber, and I've been watching his videos for many, many years. I didn't necessarily need a red bandana. I wanted that specific red bandana because what it represents to me. Number one is supporting a business that I like, that's a connection made through content. And number two, I think it's cool and I was actively looking for things I can add to my back wall there for decorations, a goal. To wrap up, competing on price is the worst thing you can do as a small business, especially when you might be competing against much larger businesses with more resources than you. Commit to figuring out ways to create connections between you and your potential customers through good content, then offer them a solution to their problem, whether that be custom engraved tumblers or an awesome product that you created yourself. Connection first, then you sell the product or service, not the other way around. If this kind of content is interesting to you and you want to hear more, first you should tap the little subscribe button there if you haven't already. Then you should sign up for my email newsletter, the Laser Dispatch, for updates and exclusive content that doesn't make it into these full-length videos. Link in the description below. Thanks for watching.